Today we're diving into an absolutely epic chronological narrative, transforming centuries of fascinating history into a visual journey to discover exactly how the modern Moroccan state was forged. It's an incredible story of survival, conquest, and identity.
So how does a seemingly disparate patchwork of desert nomads, mountain dwellers, and coastal cities manage to weave together an identity so strong that it survives into the modern era? Well, we're not just looking at a standard timeline here. It's really more like an epic relay race of empires. In this race, each ruling dynasty passes the baton, sometimes incredibly violently, to the next, layer by layer, shaping the nation we know today.
To give us a quick mental roadmap, we are riding a historical wave today. We'll start way back with the 8th century Idrisids, roll through the massive desert and tribal empires, hit the gunpowder conquests of the Saudis, and finally arrive at the Almoravids, the dynasty that is actually still in charge today.
Part 1. Forging an Islamic Foundation. Our story kicks off in the 8th century with a literal life-or-death escape.
Picture this. The year is 786. A man named Idris bin Abdallah is fleeing a brutal massacre of his family over in Arabia. He's a refugee, but he claims direct descent from the Prophet Muhammad. He manages to find sanctuary at the very edge of the known world, right near the ancient Roman ruins of Volubilis. And because of that prestigious lineage, the local Berber tribes actually take him in, make him their leader, and he starts building this exact footprint we're looking at right here.
Idris and his son, Idris II, didn't just survive this exile, they absolutely thrived. In 789 AD, they laid the foundation for what would become the legendary city of Fez. Idris II built up a guard of Arab soldiers, moved his capital there, and pushed his borders all the way from the Rif Mountains in the north down to the edges of the Sus Valley. This was a total game changer. They established a crucial precedent, a unified, independent Islamic state in the far west.
Moving on to Part 2. The Great Desert Empires. Because as that first state eventually splintered into smaller fortress principalities, a massive new power was quietly brewing in the deep sands to the south. Just look at the sheer scale of this. For the next 2 centuries, religion and trade essentially glued northwestern Africa back together. The Almoravids and later the Almohad empires didn't just hold a tiny corner of the map. They forged a transcontinental behemoth, stretching from the deep Sahara Desert all the way across the Strait of Gibraltar and right up into Spain.
We're talking about 2 consecutive juggernauts here, and the contrast between them is super fascinating. First, you have the Almoravids. They burst straight out of the desert, veiled nomads driven by strict religious scholarship who actually founded the great city of Marrakesh. But eventually, they were violently ousted by the Almohads. These guys swept down from the mountains, fiercely devoted to their leader who they saw as the Mahdi, on a strict mission to purify an empire they felt had just gotten entirely too soft.
And you know, empires tend to fall when they lose their edge. This is perfectly captured by this wildly scathing quote from a chronicler of the time talking about the Almoravids' decline. He describes a state completely deranged, the ascetic ruler withdrawing into prayer, completely ignoring his people, while the elites were busy drinking wine and indulging in every vice. When the center hollows out like that, it's practically begging to be crushed by the next hungry power waiting in the mountains. And crush it they absolutely did. Under the Almohads, raw military power hit its peak. In 1195, at the massive Battle of Al Arcos, they literally halted the Christian reconquista in Spain. But they were more than just warlords. Their court in Marrakesh became this glittering intellectual hub for the entire Islamic world. Yet, as with all these empires in our cyclical story, they eventually overextended, fractured, and fell apart.
That brings us to Part 3, the Tribal State Era. Welcome to the 13th century, where the whole dynamic shifts. As the massive Almohad Empire shattered into pieces, a group called the Marinids stepped into the void. But they had a huge problem. They couldn't just rely on a grand, unifying religious mandate like the last guys. They had to rule through pure, gritty pragmatism. We're talking complex marriage alliances, deep kinship ties, and they even imported fierce nomadic Arab tribes like the Banu Hilal to act as their military muscle. It was a really delicate, frankly unstable balancing act.
And man, without that central unifying ideology, things got incredibly messy and honestly a little terrifying. Look at this rapid-fire sequence of events as the dynasty eats itself alive. A wazir literally strangles the ruling sultan to take power. Then, a rival royal named Abu Salim comes back from Spain and kills that wazir. And then, Abu Salim's own new wazir decapitates him to install a puppet ruler. Talk about cutthroat politics.
Out of this chaotic, violent vacuum, we enter Part 4, Rise of the Sharifs. A powerful new concept was about to completely rewrite Moroccan politics.
If you want to truly understand modern Morocco, you have absolutely got to understand this term, Sharifism. As the tribal states imploded, people desperately needed a new anchor. And the idea took hold that the only legitimate ruler, the only one capable of uniting these fractured tribes and fending off foreign invasions, had to be a Sharif, someone with direct genealogical descent from the Prophet Muhammad. That bloodline became the absolute ultimate trump card for political power. Armed with this unshakable Sharifian legitimacy, a brand new dynasty called the Saudis explodes out of the deep south, specifically the Dra'a Valley. And they were wildly ambitious. They didn't just want to consolidate the north, they looked south. The Saudis launched this unbelievably audacious invasion straight across the unforgiving Sahara Desert. In 1591, they actually pulled off the unthinkable. Using cutting-edge gunpowder, which, as you can imagine, easily outmatched the bows and arrows of their enemies, the Saudis conquered the wealthy Songhai Empire and captured Timbuktu. This secured a massive flow of Saharan gold, straight back to Marrakesh. The Sultan, Ahmed al-Mansur, used all that wealth to construct the famously opulent Badi Palace, practically covered in imported Italian marble. It was a giant billboard telling the world, Morocco is a global superpower.
Part 5. The modern state emerges. Because as we've learned in this relay race, all the gold in the world doesn't guarantee your survival.
Despite their golden age, the Saudis eventually collapsed into a devastating civil war. Emerging from that incredibly chaotic mid-17th century dust was another Sharifian family, the Alawis. Coming from the desert fringes of Sijil Massa, they couldn't rely on mystical alliances or immediate immense wealth. Instead, they relied on raw, grueling military endurance. The country was completely fractured, and the Alawis painstakingly stitched the territory back together, one dusty military campaign at a time.
Their tenacity was just incredibly methodical. They systematically conquered the great rival cities, Fez in 1666 and then Marrakesh in 1669. By doing that, they established a system of unbroken rule that somehow survived the immense pressures of European colonialism in the 19th and 20th centuries, successfully transitioned the nation to modern independence in 1956, and actually continues to this very day under King Mohammed VI.
So what's the ultimate takeaway from this incredible historical relay race? From fleeing Arabian refugees finding sanctuary, to massive desert conquerors rewriting maps, to pragmatic tribal warlords, and finally, rulers claiming sacred lineage, none of these eras just vanished. Each one deposited a vital layer of bedrock. Together, those compiled layers literally forged the deeply complex Moroccan identity we know today. I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. History is never just stuck in the past. When you look at Morocco today, its politics, its culture, its geography, how much of this ancient, cyclical epic of empires, tribes, and sacred lineage do you still see beating right there in its heart? Thank you so much for joining me on this visual journey. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.